to our detailed look at your academic resources, the books that form the basis of social science discussions. Today, we have a rather provocative thinker at our table, Jean Baudrillard.
Yes, and we will discuss Baudrillard's original assessments from his work for a critique of the political economy of the sign.
Our surroundings are constantly filled with objects, right? We acquire them, use them, and constantly desire more. But what if these objects whispered to us not just what they are used for or how much they cost, but much more?
This is precisely what Baudrillard is asking. And our mission today is really to unpack his core argument. He basically says our whole understanding of society, that we make things to meet needs, is just wrong, obsolete.
Right. He argues modern life runs on this political economy of the sign. Things aren't made just for their use, but to create difference, to signal status, social meaning. That's the engine.
It sounds like a fundamental rethink concepts like needs, ideology, even how we usually critique capitalism.
Exactly. It throws all that up in the air. Baudrillard is trying to get at this unconscious social logic that's humming away beneath the surface of all our consumption.
Okay, let's try and ground this. Where do we start? Maybe with the most basic thing, the object itself.
Good idea.
So say you buy a new gadget, maybe a smart fridge. You think, great, it keeps food cold, maybe tells me when I'm out of milk. That's its use value, right?
Well, according to Baudrillard, that functional logic, it's mostly an alibi, a cover story. An alibi for what? For its real job, the core idea for analyzing consumption isn't its use of value, how it meets a supposed need, but its sign exchange value. It's about social prestige, rivalry, showing where you fit in the social hierarchy. It's a class discriminant, basically.
Okay, wait. If the status, the sign part is the real point, why does my fancy fridge still need to keep things cold? Why not just have a big, shiny status symbol that doesn't do anything practical?
That's the tension he digs into. He calls it the functional simulacrum. There's this conflict baked into modern objects. On one hand, you've got this almost aristocratic impulse valuing leisure, odium, things that aren't just about work or utility, prestige.
And on the other,
The Puritan work ethic, the demand for efficiency, for usefulness, for things to do something productive.
so the poor object is caught in the middle. It has to look like it's working hard to justify its existence as a status symbol.
Precisely. Society has this social morality that forces the object to perform functionality. It needs an excuse for being just a sign of prestige.
Like a gadget.
The gadget is the perfect example. It's often pure gratuitousness, totally unnecessary, but it has to be presented with this veneer of, solving some problem or making life easier,
It's almost embarrassing to admit we bought something just because it looks cool or shows we can afford it.
right? Even though we do it constantly, the function becomes the necessary lie.
And this isn't just abstract theory. Baudrillard points to actual sociological work, like Stuart Chapin's research back in the day. Yeah, Chapin found that you could pretty accurately measure a family social class just by taking an inventory of their living room furniture.
Just the furniture.
Just the furniture. The objects themselves were acting as a statistical index of social position. The living room as a broadcast station for status. Wow. Okay, and what about this idea? He mentions the tactic of the pot and its saucer. That sounds intriguing.
Yes, it's about that almost Baroque theatrical way people display their possessions, the anxiety that makes you underline ownership multiple times.
Give me an example. Like having fancy guest towels that are purely decorative and no one's allowed to actually use.
That's it. Exactly. Or coasters under everything. Double layers of curtains, obsessively matching accessories. It's this redundancy
With redundancies of science
that screams, I possess this. I possess it so thoroughly, I possess accessories for my possessions. It's an anxious display
that really nails a certain kind of, maybe middle-class anxiety about status. And that links to taste, right? This taste for the bygone.
Yes, the taste for antiques, or more often, mass-produced, rustic stuff. For the upwardly mobile middle classes, it's a way to sort of consecrate their new status. It gives them a sense of history, a connection to something authentic. It implies their economic success isn't just recent luck. It's like an absolute arrival. We belong now.
But the sign works differently for other groups.
Absolutely. That's the cleverness of the science system for, say, intellectuals or artists. People may be rejecting mainstream economic values. That same taste for the bygone means something else.
What does it mean for them?
It signals a refusal of their current, perhaps precarious, economic place. It's a reach for signs of a time before industrial capitalism, a way to signal distance from the very system they critique.
So the same old wooden table can signify I've made it or I reject it all depending on who owns it and their social trajectory. Fascinating.
It really is.
Okay, so if the object is primarily a sign and utility is just the alibi, this completely undermines the idea that we buy things simply because we need them.
Exactly. And this is where Baudrillard makes a really sharp break. He critiques the foundations of economics, sociology, even Marxism. He argues Marxism kind of missed the boat in a way. He says we're seeing the end of Marxism's explanatory power, not necessarily capitalism's, though maybe capitalism isn't even the right word anymore. Marx, he argues, didn't fully get the power of culture, signs, language.
He focused on production and the commodity, but not enough on consumption in the sign.
Right? It led to what Baudrillard calls a premature theoretical closure. And a big part of that closure was accepting the concept of needs at face value.
But how can you reject needs? I mean, people need food, shelter, water. That seems pretty fundamental.
He'd say that subject, object, and need are all part of the same old mythological package deal. This idea of an independent person with inherent needs that objects then satisfy, he sees that as well. Almost a kind of folk psychology.
So if you deconstruct the object as a sign,
You simultaneously deconstruct the whole idea of need as some innate biological force driving everything.
okay, my head's spinning slightly. If needs aren't real in that sense, what are they? How does he redefine? This is where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah, this is key. He talks about consumativity. Needs aren't things inside us waiting to be fulfilled.
Okay. B. Needs are better understood as a productive force, something the system requires to keep functioning, to reproduce itself.
Wait, say that again.
There are only needs because the system needs them. That's his fabulous line. The system generates the feeling of need in us to ensure we keep consuming.
So the constant desire for new things, the feeling that we need the latest phone or fashion, that's not really our desire.
It's a desire produced in us by the system. It's a necessary part of the production cycle. And this gets presented to us as freedom, as choice.
Exactly the freedom to choose which brand, which style. But Baudrillard says this liberty is just like the formal freedom of the worker in the marketplace. You're free to sell your labor, but you're not free not to participate in the system.
You're free to choose within the consumption system, but not free to opt out of consumption itself.
Precisely. It's a controlled freedom designed to keep the code, the system, running.
Okay, so if use value is an alibi and needs are manufactured by the system, what's the ideology holding it all together? If it's not just about things, what is it about?
It's about the code itself. The dominant ideological process, he argues, is an alienation of consciousness in the old sense. It's what he calls the semiological reduction.
Semiological reduction, break that down.
It means the generalization everywhere of a structural code, a logic of signs of pure signification that flattens everything out.
And this is different from Marx's idea of commodity fetishism. People usually think of that as like obsessing over gold bars or the physical stuff, right?
Yeah, Marx focused on the worship of the contents, the substance. Baudrillard flips it. He talks about the fetishism of the signifier.
Fetishism of the signifier?
Yeah, it's the worship, the sanctification of the system itself, the closed perfection of the code. It's internal logic. That's what becomes fascinating, what holds the ideological power.
Can you give an example of that fetish? Money is maybe the clearest. Think about digital transactions, cryptocurrency. What's adored there isn't physical gold or paper. It's the system's abstract power, its ability to make anything equivalent to anything else. Total commutability.
The perfection of the abstract system.
That's the fetish, the pure logic. Okay, and how does this semiological reduction play out with more human things like our ideas about beauty or the body?
Oh, that's a prime example. Think about the modern obsession with physical beauty. Is it really about natural vitality or health anymore?
Or is it more about adhering to a standard?
Exactly. It's about subjection to a discipline, the gym routine, the diet, the makeup, the cosmetic surgery. It's about conforming to a set of circulating signs. Symmetry, smoothness, youthfulness. The body becomes an artifact.
Manufactured according to the code, right? And the sign of beauty, the flawless image, the perfect measurement, that's what fascinates. It overrides the body's actual history, its work, its imperfections, its mortality. The sign cancels the real.
It reduces the complexity totally. Another example he uses is the vacation sun. Historically, the sun was complex, right? Life-giving but also dangerous, drought, death, ambivalent. But in the code of consumption, the vacation sun gets reduced. It becomes this purely positive sign, absolute source of happiness, euphoria, a required part of the good life package.
You go on holiday to get the sign of the sun, the tan, the photos.
The cultural value, all the ambiguity, the danger, the actual power of the sun is just liquidated, reduced to a simple positive token within the system.
And this logic, this reduction to code doesn't stop with objects or bodies. It extends into communication media.
Right into mass communication. He argues that the standard model wheeler and transmitter sends message to receiver isn't some neutral scientific diagram.
What is it then?
It's an ideological abstraction. It's based on a power structure where one speaks and the other doesn't. It inherently enforces the power of the transmitter, the code maker.
He calls it the terrorism of the code.
That's strong language, it is. It refers to how the code demands clarity, certainty, a lack of ambiguity. It forces everything into neat, transmittable messages and shuts down genuine reciprocity. Or, messy, unpredictable symbolic exchange. The structure itself is a form of control.
And this structure is why the media seems so incredibly good at absorbing criticism. You see a protest, a radical idea, and minutes later, it's just another new segment, another piece of content.
Exactly that. When real transgression, real critique hits, the media gets subtly negated. It's transformed into a model of transgression, neutralized into just another sign. It gets eviscerated of its actual meaning, its danger.
So showing the protest on TV actually kills its revolutionary potential.
Baudrillard argues the most effective way to neutralize something radical is to give it a mortal dose of publicity. Once it's consumed as a sign within the media code, its subversive power drains away.
The system digests everything. There's no outside viewpoint. It can't turn into content.
Pretty much. And that's why he saw value in McLuhan's famous paradoxical phrase, "The medium is the message."
Because the structure is the main thing.
Yes, McLuhan maybe accidentally pointed to the dominance of the form, the code, the medium itself as the real social determinant, much more than whatever specific content is being transmitted. The media structure mirrors the commodity structure. It demands abstraction and circulation.
Okay, so wrapping this up, this book review suggests that the way we make and exchange things, The commodity form and the way we make an exchange, meaning the sign form, aren't just linked.
They're homologous. They operate on the same fundamental logic. A general political economy that abstracts, reduces, quantifies, and controls everything for its own reproduction.
It's a total system. Which brings us back to those four logics of value you mentioned earlier. Use value exchange, value, sign value, and the one that gets kicked out.
Symbolic exchange, the gift, reciprocity, ritual destruction of value, things that operate outside the logic of equivalence and accumulation.
It's defined by being other than value, beyond the code.
It's the radical alternative, the only thing that in this framework truly escapes the system because the system literally cannot assign it a value. It's worthless to the code.
And there's that fascinating, almost disturbing real-world exam